Whoa, you totally just caught me hanging out. Well, you know, I happen to already be thinking about Pokemon anyway. So today I thought I'd do a fun little challenge where I just kind of ramble about Pokemon for an indefinite amount of time. You might notice I have a timer here. I'm actually just going to start this now. The goal is to not edit this, so you'll be able to see if I do. Maybe, you know, if I sneeze or something, I'll edit that out because nobody really needs to see that, and I don't think anybody really wants to. And if you do, you should probably get some help. But we're going to be just talking about Pokemon today. I have a lot of things that are just on my mind, so you guys are going to get a little peek into how I think about things. I always have many lines of conversation going on in my head at any given time, and if you're wondering why I'm under my desk, I'll explain that later, but spoiler alert, there's not a very good reason. I kind of just like being under here. It's a good safe space. So first, I think we should talk about the three main parts of the hobby, which are going to be the three S's: slabs, singles, and sealed. I think there might be things outside of this. I don't know, supplies, that could be the fourth S. You know, I've got lots of binders here, but not to out myself, actually a lot of these are empty. We can talk about that later as well. But first, let's start with slabs. I feel like are the spiciest conversation. So maybe we'll start with singles. I mean, I'm Ava's binder, so obviously, if you guys didn't know, I do actually like singles. I think that they are the most accessible part of the hobby for the most people. One, because they're the most cost efficient, and also none of this video is financial advice. And when I talk about things for the purpose of this video, we're gonna imagine it from a collector's perspective. So when I'm talking about buying things, I'm not talking about them to resell, okay? My job is very strict about what I say. So for this video, that's not what we're not imagining that. If I talk about things appreciating value, it's more so to just save money on your collection and, you know, trade value, really, okay? So not financial advice in this video. But singles, I think, are just one of the greatest ways to get into the hobby, and also it's something that I've been focusing on a lot lately, which is really exciting because back in 2021, I was obviously not buying a lot of singles. As I talked about in my videos, I wasn't doing a lot of the things that I honestly think are the most exciting. I talked about this in my last video. Also, thank you guys. That was the fastest video I ever had, get to 10,000 views, so that was very exciting. Also shocking. And it kind of gave me the courage to make more videos like this, where it's just kind of me talking about the things I want to talk about and not really worrying about the YouTube algorithm or like what I think other people want to see. And also, this is a great video because I'm sure I'm going to say things I actually, upon further reflection, disagree with, because I constantly am having like new ideas pop into my head and thinking about them more critically and coming up with new conclusions. So probably gonna upload this without watching it back, and it'll just make, you know, so much good content for people to hate on and roast, which is obviously the best. And also it can help, you know, crush my ego because we gotta stay humble. So going back to singles, right now is a great time to be collecting singles. In my opinion, things have gotten a lot more affordable, and again, from a collector's perspective, since 2021 and 2022 even. In particular, a lot of modern cards have come down a lot. Obviously, that's not always the case. If you look at Sun and Moon cards, those have actually gone up so much. The tag team cards in particular, I actually have an article on TCG Player about that. I think that was actually a pretty good article. I don't know if I would say that about all of my TCG Player articles, if I'm being honest, because there's like certain restrictions on what you can say because of the format that it is, where it's an article. It just kind of limits what you're able to say. I don't know if I should be saying this about my own work, but yeah. Anyway, going back to singles, I would say that of all the things that I am focusing on right now, singles are probably number one. And then weirdly enough, slabs are probably number two, and sealed is probably number three. We're gonna go into why that is, because a lot of my views are still the same, but where I am in my life is pretty different. So, as I've always said, it depends on what's right for you, and what's right for me in this moment is obviously, hopefully, the thing that I'm currently doing. Otherwise, it'd be kind of bad if it weren't. And I'm in a weird era right now, if you couldn't tell. So that's why I'm doing weird things. But I've been buying so many singles, honestly, cards from all eras, Japanese and English, and I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been too picky. It's really just about the price that I'm paying, because I have actually started selling a lot more cards because I do go to conventions and I'll bend and it's like the best time ever. And I just like singles because it feels more true to me, and also they just tend to do well at in-person events for me personally because I think it, one, helps you stand out. Two, I like to have a really cool variety of singles, so I'll have all sorts of cards. I'll have a lot of Japanese exclusive vintage cards, so things like Game Boy promos, vending series, the quick starter birds, those are some of my favorites. Also, again, this video is not going to be edited, so if you want to look up anything, you're going to have to Google it yourself. But actually, I feel like that's really good for just your own memory rather than having images handed to you. If you have to Google it yourself and process what I'm saying more, I think that's actually really helpful. So this is kind of be like podcast mode. I mean, you can sit here and watch me sit under my bed. I would be happy to hang out here with you. I think this is a great early morning, late evening, or like work time kind of video. So that's where I'm kind of at with singles. And I've also, as I said earlier, been selling on Whatnot sometimes. I don't really do anything like super fancy. I kind of do similar things to what I'm doing right now, where mostly I just talk and then I'll run singles at $1, maybe slabs sometimes, but mostly that. But luckily I'm pretty good at, well, I like to think I'm pretty okay at sourcing cards. So I can sell things for like 70 to 90% of market and still, you know, theoretically make a little bit of money. Theoretically, not financial advice again. This is just me talking about my own personal experiences, which are going to be different for everyone. And again, I think one, I've never promoted my Whatnot outside of Whatnot, so all of the growth on there was like organic. But I think a big part of being able to sell on a platform like that is just your camera presence. So I think that's a good example that I can just talk continuously. And I think that's really important. And like, it's a big stress reliever. Honestly, like, it is really nice as someone who spends a lot of time alone in their thoughts to just be able to be social in a way that does not actually involve going outside and speaking to humans in the real world, because gosh, that's scary. That's really intense. Oh my God, where did the timer go? Oh, what a scam. We're resuming the timer. I fixed it. So for all you know, I've been cheating this entire time. But basically, what I'm saying is the reason I think singles work well for me is because of, again, where I'm at in my current life, where I go to a lot of in-person events, and singles tend to do very well for me there. And also just what I like to sell online. I'm just, as, again, Ava's binder, like the things I get most excited about aren't going to be like slabs that are going to be in the same price range. So for example, like a $50 slab to me is usually not a card that's worth being in a slab, but there are so many cool $50 singles, black and white full arts, all these alternate arts, so many cool things can be $50 singles versus $50 slabs, I feel like are a lot less exciting. And again, I'm somebody who, despite a lot of these binders actually being empty, does really love flipping through a binder and looking at cards. Honestly, we should probably just rename me like Ava's Crusty Top Loaders or Yucky ETBs, because a lot of my cards are just in like broken halves of ETBs right now. It is a sad way that I live my life, but what do you expect from someone who's currently sitting under their desk talking to their phone by themselves? So I feel like I could talk about singles for a really long time, and I think I could talk about a lot of these things for a really long time, but I kind of want to just like talk about a lot of things today. And I think once we have touched on everything, so single, slabbed, and sealed, we can talk about them more in relation to each other and their pros and cons. So rather than droning on about singles in isolation for such a long time, I think it'd be great to I think we could talk about slabs next, and then we'll talk about sealed last, because obviously a lot of what people know me for is talking about sealed product, and I do stand by everything I said, and I think it still applies today. But for slabs, again, I am somebody who really is not a fan of the current dynamic that we have in the hobby, and a lot of that has been caused by grading, and I think it creates a lot of toxic behaviors, and just, I don't know if they're even toxic, but they're things that are personally like my pet peeve. Like for me, whenever I'm looking at a single to add to my collection, like I'm not gonna be someone who is looking at every single thing, pre-grading it to get a 10, unless, I mean, I get it if it's something you want to grade, but for like a $30 card or something, I'm totally happy if it has a spec or two. And one thing that's really annoyed me is how there's this phenomenon of not everybody doing this, but there is definitely a subsect of people who do this where they will stop calling a card near mint or try and get a discount off of already like regular near mint prices. Not from me even, but I see this all the time with vendors at shows and like my friends and stuff who are vending, or even some of my friends who are buying sometimes, guys. Come on, let's be civil here, okay? I'll see them do this and ask for these discounts, and to me, I don't know, it just feels yucky. And also, it's just, I understand that you want to make your money and stuff, but when you do that, to me, it's so clear that you're just doing this to grade the card and make money and sell it, and it makes me want to sell it to you less, or just like feel like I don't want to give you a discount because it's not even like you really like this card. Whereas when someone comes up to me and like starts squealing over a card, like, you know, especially female collectors, because we gotta look out for each other. Anytime, like, I always have a lot of cute evolution cards because they're just cards I like to have, like especially like Sylveon, Flareon from Generations. Oh, I love those cards. But those are the types of cards that a lot of times the people who are buying them really love them, and it makes me want to give them a better price. Also, when I talk about prices, like, I'm not gonna lie, if you guys couldn't tell, 1, I'm a bit lazy, and 2, I'm extremely disorganized. So when I am selling things at conventions, I'll usually print out a little label thing that just says 10% off of TCG Player or 10% off of eBay, unless it's already stickered, because I cannot be bothered to price things. And one of my biggest pet peeves is when people don't have prices and they take forever to price things, and then it turns out that they're overcharging for things. So I'm like, well, I really cannot convince myself to actually do this in advance, but I can convince myself to at least give people a good deal for having to wait. And I feel like it's a win-win for everybody because I'm still netting more than if I were to sell things online, and they're getting a good price and everybody's happy. So that's just one thing I personally like to do. And again, like, I a lot of times will sell things for discounts online anyway. So to me, I'm happy with that. But so that's an initial thought on the whole slabs thing. That isn't even really talking about slabs, but that's talking about the impact that slabs have on the singles market directly. And I think it's taken away a lot of the joy. Like, even myself, like, I'll catch myself doing this sometimes. So like, I'm gonna call myself out a lot in this, by the way. On my birthday, yeah, I just had my birthday recently. I know it's a big deal. Thank you guys. I know. Happy birthday to everybody else too, because we can just pretend it's all of our birthday. I don't know why I really said that. But anyway, I opened one Sam's Club box. It was the Tyranitar, the Heavy Hitters collection, I believe is what it's called. It was the one with Tyranitar and Lucario. Had 2 packs of Evo Skies. In the very last pack of the box that I opened, I got a Moonbryon. And I was super excited. I had never pulled this card before, and I actually haven't opened that much Evolving Skies, so, you know, that was actually quite cool. I'm also not a huge fan of Evolving Skies, so I'm not somebody who would, like, spend a lot of money or time trying to chase this card, so it was kind of a fun coincidence that I got that card. But I looked at it and I was like, it's a little OC, might be a 9. And then I immediately kind of reprimanded myself in my head, like, that really shouldn't matter, because that's one of those cards where, because I pulled it myself, because I pulled it under those conditions, I'm not going to sell it anyway. So I don't know why I'm kind of using these kind of just conventional means of valuing something to value something that I'm not going to sell anyway. And I don't know if I would even grade it either way. So I'm trying to make an active effort to not do that, especially when it's just things that I own, because I think it's very easy to be very critical, especially of your own cards. I think imposter syndrome is something that could be talked about extensively. That is not going to be what we're talking about in today's video, because that video is just like, that's something that I feel like needs to be like mentally prepared for, because it's such an exhausting topic to think about, because you have to be also very vulnerable to talk about something like that. And this is my little safe space right here, okay? So good vibes only. Maybe I'll whine a little bit, but I'm also going to talk about things I'm excited about. So again, I think there's a lot of cards right now that are being graded that I personally would not grade, and that's fine, but I think it ultimately, I think it can lead to some harm in the hobby, because it eventually will start to devalue a lot of cards, and there's going to be a lot of people who end up wasting money on slabs, especially for new sets. This is the same thing for singles as well, but I think it becomes particularly egregious for slabs, because some of the prices you'll see when a new promo drops, so like Felt Hat Pikachu, things like that, when those cards first drop and people pay like the $100 for the express grading or $50 to get it faster, there will be somebody who overpays for that card. And to me, I just feel bad for those people who do that. I get that it's like a play or whatever and people make money doing that, and that's totally valid. But for me, that's just, I don't like that. It just gives me the ick, you know? And also, like, maybe I'm saying that because I'm not somebody who really can do that, in that, like, unfortunately, I do have to work. So, like, I can't be, like, catching all these drops of these promos, or, like, I'm too lazy to send things out to get graded immediately. I think I submit things to PSA, like, twice a year. I know. Fake fan over here. I'm not qualified to be a PokeTuber, but that's okay, because you know what? Everybody has their thing, and that's not going to be mine. And there's also, this is again a thing I touched on recently. I feel like people, like, there's just this weird subsect of, like, everybody is trying to make this like a business, which is fine. And I also make money off of this hobby once in a while. I also waste a lot of money on this hobby once in a while, especially when we start talking about not Pokemon, like Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! On this channel too much because I don't want to encourage people to make poor financial choices like me, but yeah, it's bad sometimes. I'll go through phases. It's like a wave where I'm like, all right, you know, they just dropped a cool new Yu-Gi-Oh! Product, we're gonna rip a bunch of it. Or like, I like to collect ghost rares. If you don't know Yu-Gi-Oh! Ghost rares, especially because gotta get the first edition, guys. And like 5Ds era ghost rares are a lot of the most, actually some of the most expensive cards in the hobby when we're not talking like main set cards. They get up there. But that's something I like to collect personally. So we don't talk about that too much on here, but yeah, that is something I do enjoy. Oh my gosh, there's so much to say about slabs because it is like the hottest topic all the time. Like, it's also interesting because even when, like, it's become such a thing that I'll watch like YouTube videos, and I think I've even done this, where like you'll pull a card, especially when they're doing a vintage opening, and for the prices, they'll put like the PSA 10 price or even like the PSA 9 price. It's like, all right, that makes it sound a lot cooler to say like, yeah, man, I pulled a Wigglytuff from base set, and this card in a 10 is like, doot, versus like a raw card near mint, it's like, I don't know what, 20, 30 bucks, if even, something like that. Which is just funny to me. I think people also, like, because of grading, I think it encourages people to make a lot more poor financial decisions, particularly with ripping high-end vintage stuff, which is like totally fine to do. And I get that it's very fun and nostalgic because, again, I ripped Dark Explorers recently, which doesn't have a great expected value and is still very expensive. When you factor in grading, it does, because if you hit some of those cards in 10s, they're thousands of dollars. But, you know, there's a lot of cards where if you don't grade them, you could never break even on a pack. But when you factor in grading, even though it's very difficult to get those high grades, like getting a vintage 10 or something, it's very difficult. Also, clearly this is not a comprehensive view on my thoughts on slabs. These are more just different touch points of different things. Again, I'm kind of brainstorming right now, and this is like stream of consciousness. I don't need to explain myself, but I am anyway. Okay, so let's talk about sealed. This is the one that I think is pretty contentious, right? I don't know, it's like, no, slabs, I feel like still. But, you know, a lot of the people who were talking about investing in sealed product either, I feel like, are not anymore, or they're still talking about the same products as like a year ago when I last made videos. And that's, I feel like you have to keep looking at the present time. So it's weird to me to be looking at the exact same period of time a year later when I feel like you've got to move forward. Not that you can't still buy those products and stuff, but it's important to look at the new products that are coming out and things like that. So my current view on sealed is actually, well, first, I have a whole TCG Player article talking about why Scarlet and Violet might not suck. Shameless self-promo. I would recommend checking that out because I think it actually raised a lot of interesting points that haven't really been talked about. I'll maybe briefly touch on like the contents of that here, but I think it could also be a full video in and of itself, especially one that's actually mildly edited to at least make somewhat sense. Again, this is kind of podcast vibes, okay? But right now, I'm not buying as much sealed product because one, I live in a shoebox. Part of why I'm under my desk is, this is actually just where I sleep because I moved to New York for work. And this is my entire apartment right here. So I've got a whopping 16 square feet. So this is just where I sleep. You're actually on top of my microwave, which also doubles as my pantry where I keep all the food in when I'm not cooking. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. This is actually the case. And then I have a communal bathroom down the hall that I use. So this is my apartment tour as well. So this kind of doubles as that. So isn't that exciting? I feel like it kind of is. But I don't have a lot of space right now. And also because, like I said, I'm very active in the hobby right now, albeit not necessarily online. And it makes more sense in some ways. I do already have also a lot of sealed product, like as is. So I feel like I have a significant amount of exposure. Okay, again, not to sell, but to grow the value of my collection and be a good collector. None of this is financial advice. I already have a lot of that stuff, and I don't have a lot of space in my current apartment. And that's something I've talked about in videos in the past, where if you don't have a lot of space, collecting sealed product doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. So I've just been pretty picky about what I'm getting, especially because right now you can get so much cool sealed stuff for way cheaper than you could a couple years ago. And that's I felt sad because I had to hold off, but you can watch my previous video and you'll see I've got some new sealed products in the background. I have the Shining Legends UPC. I have the Super Premium Collection, I think. Super Premium Collection? I think so. And I've got the Dragon Majesty one up there. And those are things I really like. Granted, those do take up a lot of space, but they're also just really fun, and they're things I like to display. That's another thing about slabs is, for me, I like to enjoy everything I own regardless of my intention with purchasing it. So I like having cool sealed things. I like having singles that I can flip through a binder, and I like having slabs that I truly enjoy so that I can look at them and actually get enjoyment out of them. For me, I don't get enjoyment out of a slab that's around $50 usually. If it's something that I want to have because, I'm a species collector, I collect Entei, which is also on my little list of things to discuss, then it makes sense for me. But it's still not going to be something I want to display. I want to have every Entei in a PSA 10. I know. Buy the card, not the grade. But it is cool, and I'm, completionist. And I've already reached the point where I could get every Entei in a 9. But it's a lot more challenging at this point and rewarding for me to get them in 10s. It is also significantly more expensive, but that also makes it more enjoyable when I do acquire a piece for my collection. And a lot of these cards are quite rare. So for example, I think the Team Magma Entei EX that I do have one in a 10. It's also the newest cert, so it's a 7 cert. So it's actually a really beautiful card, which is really exciting. And someone just walked up to me at Collecticon with that card because they heard that I collect Entei and they wanted to sell it for me because they knew I'd give them a lot of money for it, which I ultimately did. But actually it was a pretty good price, okay? It was a little bit below recent comps and stuff. And for the quality of the card, especially, I think the pop is 23. Don't quote me on that. You can fact check me and tell me I'm wrong in the comments. But, having that card just come up to me is so exciting because it's not that hard to find 9s, but 10s, that's a true challenge. And that's kind of why I enjoy it more. It's the thrill of the hunt and just knowing that when I put together this collection, I have more of a lot of these cards assembled than most people do. I think the pop, I said around 23 on that one. And there are ones that are going to be even more difficult to find, which I'm not looking forward to. But I do also enjoy that challenge because it's not I can just, some of these I can't just go on eBay and buy them. So that is, I think, where slabs have a lot of meaning and they can enhance your enjoyment of the hobby because Entei isn't, these cards aren't expensive naturally. And I would feel a lot of temptation to just go out and get them all or get a lot of them at once. Whereas because there's that high barrier to entry, it makes each one that I acquire more rewarding and feel more special. And it gives me more of a story behind every single card that I acquire because having, you know, I actually got the Team Rocket's Anti-EX in a 10 the same day. Actually, a different copy than I currently have because that one was a 2 cert as the other one. And to me, that was just like so cool because 2 people came up to me, 2 different people with those cards in one day. But like, what are the odds of that? One of those is like under pop 50. The other one is under pop 100, I'm pretty sure. So that was really cool to me. And also, those cards have gotten way cheaper. Oh my gosh. The Team Rocket's Anti-EX, I can't remember the exact price I paid, but it was somewhere between $600 and $800, I think, and the last sold online, I think, is $849. And by I think, I mean I'm pretty sure, because I'm pretty good at remembering numbers, guys, okay? Come on, Avis Binder. So yeah, it's just, I feel like slabs are just this thing I have such mixed emotions on, and this has always been the case. And I feel like I'm feeling that more and more now, especially as it just seems like I would have thought that there would have been fewer junk slabs entering the market, but it almost feels like there's more, especially as we see the, I don't know if diversification is the word, but there's become a much more of a spread between grading services. I don't think that this is really the video to discuss that, and I also don't like to give super strong opinions on those types of topics, but you do see a lot of cards entering the market that I don't think are really things that should be graded, and I think people only grade them because they do know that they can find somebody, especially people who are less educated, who are willing to buy those cards because they're graded. And a lot of people will just think that, well, it was graded, so it must be worth at least the cost of grading, the regular cost of grading, but a lot of times people will have access to discounted pricing and things like that that make it so they can grade these 25-cent cards and sell them for $12 and make money. Which is, you know, obviously people have their own business models and people do get enjoyment out of those cards. And then it becomes another question where, okay, if the person getting it likes the card and the person grading it makes money and stuff, is it really harmful? I don't know. I personally, it does give me the ick a little bit. And yeah, but like, again, to each their own. I'm just like, this is truly the epitome of me just sitting in my little corner talking about the things I'm going to talk about. Like, I always feel like I'm just like off in my own little corner doing my own little thing. And today we are truly epitomizing that. I apologize. I just got something delivered, so I had to go get that really quickly. But we were talking about slabs, my feelings on that, and I think you guys get my view on that already. So going back to Seal just for a little bit, do I think that the current sets coming out are cheap? Yes. Do I think that there is a very high level of urgency to buy them right now? No. Let me explain why. I do think that there's a very high probability of the sets in Scarlet and Violet that come out later being better than the ones that are currently out, because of the reasons I mentioned in the TCG Player article I alluded to earlier. And because of that, what I think happening, I see 2 probable scenarios. The first of which is that, I know also people like, you know, when I talk about sealed product and stuff, so, you know, we're getting to that. But I kind of want to just make it be its own video, because I feel like if I talk about it in this one, I'm going to see another person say the same opinion as me, and then I'm going to feel like I shouldn't make a video about it, because I just don't like when my content overlaps with other people too much, because I don't know why. I feel weird. I have a lot of things where I'm like, I feel like this isn't allowed, but it's really just me feeling like that. Even though it's like, oh, I already said it, but I'm like, it just feels like there's no point. So anyway, I think there are 2 probable scenarios, basically. The first of which is that, okay, sorry, let me restart. Assuming that the sets that come out are better than the current ones, which we can get into in another video talking about this in more depth, assuming they're better, which I think is very likely looking at the history of Pokemon generations, which also just makes sense from a business perspective on Pokemon's part, why they would have later sets in a generation be better. What would happen then is a lot of attention would go to those sets. So the current sets likely wouldn't see a lot of people getting, again, when I say people getting into them, like you can infer that I mean supply is decreasing, and when supply decreases, something else goes up, like not financial advice. But when that happens, you know, more people might start to want them, like if, you know, supply goes down, things like that. But if these new sets are good, people are going to be focused on those, and I can see those either releasing, a lot of these boxes will go for $80, $90. I can see them either releasing at around that price or being initially a bit higher, and I don't see people instantly going back to these ones. This is also true of Sword and Shield, where people just aren't immediately interested in them, or maybe they do go up to like 120 or whatever. I don't really see them getting that much higher in the mid to near term. Whereas these other boxes, if you can get these for around the same price as these current ones, I would hop on those all day. Like, I'm just imagining like Vivid Voltage versus like Fusion Strike, because they're from like the beginning and then the middle of Sword and Shield, and then not even talking about the ones at the end of the generation, because that's a bit far out, and I think it's very easy to speculate on what will happen in these next 4 sets. But then what happens then, I think, will really determine what the end of the generation will look like, because if they follow the pattern that I described in that article, which is a 4-4-4 structure, wherein the first 4 sets, it's also basically a 1-year schedule, right? Because there's 4 sets a year. First 4 sets, meh. Second 4, better. Last 4, best. Because that's when excitement is the lowest for a generation. When a new generation comes out, first you have a new mechanic automatically. Basically, the Pokemon company will use a new mechanic almost every generation. 2, you have all these new Pokemon, all this hype around the games and stuff. They just don't need anything to help bolster sales and make people excited about the TCG. But in the middle of the generation, yeah, they might, especially because we know that they can still make great sets, because we saw 151 is an amazing set. I know some people aren't that excited about Paldean Fates, but it is still a very solid, basically Shining Fates, Hidden Fates. It's a very good, shiny holiday set, even though it's coming out after the holidays, but whatever, you know. There's clearly a lot of potential with Scarlet and Violet, and these are very good sets. Like, again, we have to compare things to like pre-sort, like if we compare, okay, sorry, let me restart. If we compare them to the equivalent sets from Sword and Shield, which were, you know, Rebel Clash, base set, Vivid Voltage, the sets that are coming out now are pretty dang solid, because, okay, the equivalent would be like Darkness Ablaze would be Obsidian Flames. I know which of those sets that I would rather have. So, again, we got to think about the quality of the sets. I don't feel a lot of urgency, especially right now, to just put money into products that are cheap, when I think that the next products that come out will also most likely be cheap, just looking at recent trends, that I think will be better. Because it is good to, you know, diversify your collection, but it's also good to be choosy, right? So this actually leads me into another topic, which is species collecting, because it is both a very diversified collection and also an extremely niche collection. So let me explain what I mean when I say that, and also why I am a species collector, and it's one of my primary goals. I have a lot of goals and I have a lot of things that I like to collect, but having something to anchor my collection, which again, I always say this could be a video in and of itself, is really important for, one, maximizing my enjoyment in the hobby and giving me a sense of fulfillment and progress that I lack in my general life, because at the end of the day, all collectors, we're just looking to fill some void in our lives. That's probably not true, but just making a bit of a joke. For me, it helps with, again, like I said, progress. And it also, despite being very niche, especially, you know, I'm not collecting Charizard. Like, I collect Entei and then Raikou and Suicune because I'm a completionist and I like to have full sets. And so it is very specific to a certain Pokemon, which, like, has a lot of risks, but that's mitigated by the fact that because I want to have every single card, I'm getting cards from every generation. Also, like, I'm just gonna take a moment to do a shameless self-promo. Because it's something cute. I made channel memberships on my channel. They're like a few bucks a month. And I have these little stickers that are custom of me. And some of my rats, I can't add them all though, because I have to have like 2 channel members. So if, you know, we could get 2 channel members, I can add more of my stickers that I had commissioned for another thing. And I don't want to talk about how much I paid because we're never going to recoup that cost probably, but I just want to have a reason to use them at least so I don't feel like they're totally going to waste. I also have some little gifts I made. They're really cute. Also, for some reason, one of the artists made me like randomly curvy in them, and I was like too embarrassed to say like, I appreciate the intent here, but you know, I gotta be realistic with myself. You know, it's not accurate. But I forgot to do it before like the commission like window ended, so it was just like, all right, I'm just gonna keep these. But anyway, they're really cute. They involve me and my rats, but they're really cute. Okay, they're not like weird. I don't know. I like them, and so you can get access to those with the membership, and it obviously supports me. It's only like a couple bucks a month, so it's really more about the spirit of the thing. And yeah, I don't know. It's cool. But so the reason I think it's so amazing to be a species collector, aside from being able to really hone in on something you enjoy in the hobby, is that you get exposure to every era of the TCG. Now again, this depends on the species you're collecting. So for example, you know, if you're a Mantike species collector, well, I think there's like 2 printings of Mantike of all time. Or if you're, say, collecting a Pokemon like Reshiram that came out in Gen 5, obviously that doesn't apply. But for a lot of people who are species collectors, they like to collect a species that is from most likely Gen 1, Gen 2, maybe Gen 3. There's a decent amount of people who like to have like cards from like Gen 5 and stuff as well. But a lot of them are going to be those classic nostalgic Pokemon, like it is for me. And most likely, it's probably going to be a Pokemon that other people like. While I do admire and respect the people who just like are like obsessed with like Slowbro or something random, most people who are species collectors are going to choose a species that's somewhat popular. Entei, he's like a B tier, I would say, in terms of popularity, but he's certainly not bad. Legendary beasts are pretty popular. He's not the most popular. I think that would definitely go to Suicune. But, you know, a lot of people will collect, obviously Charizard is the most obvious example, but like Lugia is a great option. Oh my gosh. Mew is another one. And when you collect those cards, those are great because people are always gonna want those. Like people will always love those Pokemon and they will always be popular. And you get exposure to every era of cards because as we've seen, a lot of times there are waves in Pokemon where certain eras appreciate. For example, Gold Stars, you know, a couple years ago, really gained a lot of popularity. And a lot of these desirable Pokemon that are going to be the types of Pokemon people want to be species collectors for are going to just naturally be part of that subset, which is great because, you know, you suddenly have one very cool card, but also a card that has appreciated a lot in value. And, you know, you could always trade that for, you know, more cards. I'm not saying we ever would sell those cards, but we could trade them for better value. That's what I'm saying. And that's really cool. And it's just a really nice, natural way to get some diversification. Because again, it doesn't matter. That Pokemon doesn't have to get more popular. Because as we say, like, you know, a rising tide lifts all ships. If every card in Expedition or just e-readers pop off or tag teams pop off, any card that is a tag team will start to do well. And that's really awesome. And again, it helps buoy against the same thing in reverse. For example, vintage slabs, not doing too hot. That's another topic I'd like to talk about because I actually see a lot of opportunity there, which I did not see a couple of years ago. And I was saying that, you know, it was too expensive at the time, but I think now perhaps is a better time to start collecting those if you want to. You know, if your Neo Genesis Lugia suddenly drops by 50% in value, it's not the end of the world because maybe you have a nice little Crystal Lugia, which just is a really solid card. You have so many other Lugia cards to help buoy you that it's not that big of a deal. So you really can get a better balance. Now, it's not going to help you massively like outperform, but it's going to be a way to get a lot of really cool cards that you can enjoy, and you don't have to worry as much. Whereas if, you know, maybe you're master setting a modern set, you know, getting a full binder collection, and oops, the set gets printed into the ground or something, well, that is a big L. And also, those cards are usually just easy to sell because, for example, like you've got an Expedition Mew. Okay, maybe someone's not a Mew collector, but if they want to have a master set of Expedition, they have to have Mew. And it's also going to be probably other species collectors, because I say this all the time, but if there's something you like enough to collect it, there's probably somebody else who actually also wants it. But when you start buying cards here and there randomly just because you think they'll do well, that's when things start to get a little sus, right? We should all focus on collecting things that we really truly enjoy. And I will stand by that, which is also why I've never gotten into things like Lorcana, other TCGs, because I don't believe in them. And like, I'm never gonna lose sleep at night when, you know, Pokemon isn't doing too hot, because I'm like, oh well, like even if the things I have depreciate in value, I don't feel any urgency to sell them because I can still enjoy them even when they're cheap. So I don't feel like I'm wasting time or money by having them when they aren't doing well. So we've gotten through actually a decent amount of the things I wanted to talk about. Not a lot of them, so definitely gonna have to ramble more, but we've already been going for over 40 minutes. I do want to say thank you guys again for everyone just enjoying my last video. It's not really about the views, it's the fact that people were willing to listen to me ramble, kind of a lot more than I thought, which was a little bit daunting. And there were definitely people who disagreed with what I was saying, and I think part of it was because the video was so short, and I just kind of wanted to get it out there because I felt like I had to rip off a band-aid to just upload a new video. But I think people in the comments made a lot of valid points, which is that there are a lot of collectors out there that aren't active on social media that I do want to point out. I wasn't trying to say that there aren't. I just mean that of the people you do see in person, there are a lot more people who are interested in selling versus, you know, years ago, it didn't feel that way when I would go to in-person events and things like locals, all of that stuff. It was a very different era though, obviously, but there are absolutely a lot of real collectors out there who are not on social media. And a lot of people made the point to let me know in the comments that they were true collectors. But then I'm also like, but you're not hidden because you're commenting on this video. Make it make sense. Sorry, I'm just being silly at this point. But again, thank you guys for watching. Channel memberships, TCG player articles, whatnot, shameless self-promo, link in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you for listening to me ramble. Like, what? I'm just sitting here under my desk. But I do think there's something to be said about sitting on the floor. I bet there's scientific evidence for it helping brain function, because for me, I feel like I've always liked sitting on the floor. Like when I was in college and I would be doing work, especially early in the morning, I would love to sit on the floor. I would highly recommend you guys give it a chance sometime because it's really great. And again, also, this is my bed. So I'm gonna go to sleep now and, you know, curl up because I'm already here in my pajamas, and hopefully I will see you guys again soon. And maybe we'll do more of this. Maybe, hopefully I'll actually get around to editing a video, but I'll talk to you guys later.